Slay Crusaders, glad you're here. Really excited for our first guest. He is one of our very own contributors here on The First. He was a part of a viral clip just the other day that is absolutely blown up, but that's not the last you're going to hear of Rob Smith. I'm certain of that. Rob, how are you, brother?
I'm doing well, man. How you doing?
Really good to talk to you. And your new book is called Always a Soldier. When's it come out on pre-order?
Always a Soldier, Service, Sacrifice, and Coming Out as America's Favorite Black Gay Republican is out for pre-order today. The book will be on bookshelves all across the country in late May.
All right, beautiful. I want to talk all about that too, but let's talk about this moment from last week. Guys, do we have the AOC clip just to set this up a little bit? So this was AOC talking about bootstraps in this hearing.
Ms. Hutchinson, I also want to thank you about bringing up the poverty draft and this idea of a bootstrap. You know, this idea and this metaphor of a bootstrap started off as a joke because it's a physical impossibility to lift yourself up by a bootstrap, by your shoelaces. It's physically impossible. The whole thing is a joke.
I heard that, and I didn't know that you were there, Rob. So what was that hearing? What was the context for what she said?
So the context of the hearing was the Trump administration is making a proposal to recalculate the federal poverty line. And the idea with the left is that, the poverty line is already so low, and if they recalculate it, it'll go lower. And of course, they want that standard to be higher so that they can push more and more socialist policies, so that they can push more and more of a socialist big government agenda. So that was the focus of the hearing that I was at. And obviously, you know, the Republicans are in the minority right now in Congress, so I was the only Republican witness. It was Rep. Meadows and Jordan, I believe. Congressman Meadows and Jordan are on the oversight committee for that hearing. And so basically, when I said my words, I told my story of growing up as a poor kid in Akron, Ohio, joining the military right out of high school to better my life, realizing that big government was not the answer to my problems. I do not believe that big government and more government intervention and these welfare programs are going to lift Americans out of poverty. I think that the things that are going to lift Americans out of the working class and poor and into the middle and upper classes are ideas of American exceptionalism, are ideas like bootstrapping, are ideas like entrepreneurship, which obviously AOC and her big government cronies in Congress are against.
Tell me about your life, Rob. Where'd you grow up, and how poor, if I may?
Yeah. So look, I grew up in Akron, Ohio, very working class, not dirt poor, not projects. I've never pretended to be anything like that. Like I was basically, I lived in the city. I was at the top of the hill. The projects were at the bottom, so it was around. Single mother. My mother was on public assistance right after her and my father got divorced when I was 3 years old. And what I didn't get to say in that hearing is that when my mother tells me about the very short period of time where she was on public assistance, I remember her telling me how much she hated it and how much she couldn't wait to get off of it. And she would always instill these messages in me growing up that, you know what, that is not the answer. Being on welfare is not the answer. You have to do more for yourself. You have to do better for yourself. You have to get an education. And the thing about AOC, as she sits in Congress, as somebody who was working class, as somebody who has achieved the heights of, she's a congresswoman, for God's sake. She is an example of American exceptionalism. But yet, the people that could rise and achieve just like her, she chooses to say that America is beating you down because America is racist, because America is sexist, because America is homophobic, because America is all of these different things. AOC and Ilhan Omar and the squad, all of these people should be doing cartwheels talking about how great America is because they have been allowed to achieve because this is where they are. And it boggles the mind that they say the opposite.
And you're so right. She is a bootstrap story. Yeah. She just looks in the mirror and she can see it herself. She should. But what does it say? This my wife's first point that she said when she saw that clip was, what a horrible message that is to kids, to a young Rob Smith in Akron, Ohio, that there is no such thing as this idea of a bootstrap. Where would your life be different if your mom told you that AOC message when you were a young boy?
I mean, the thing about it is that if I got that message when I was younger, I would just be like, well, okay, I mean, I guess, let's get on welfare, let's try to game the system, let's do whatever. Mike, if you tell people that they cannot achieve, then they will not achieve. And this is the message that comes from the left to Americans of all colors, but it's particularly insidious when they preach this message to African Americans, to Latinos, to people that are minorities. If you are telling people that they cannot succeed, that they cannot achieve, they will never achieve. And one of the more insidious parts of this message is that you may be able to do something, but only with our help. And you know what? This is just like the Obama years. It's like, vote for us, put us in office, we'll take care of you. Look, what I want to tell people, and coming from the background that I did come from, nobody is coming to save you. You have to save yourself. And that message of self-reliance and that message of American exceptionalism is what makes our country so great, is what inspires so many people here to do so many amazing things.
And it's amazing that the people who say you can't do it are the ones who are seen as the champions of minorities and the poor or whatever. That's so bizarre. And they're the one who's saying, you can do it. Here's how. You're the evil bad guy who wants bad for everyone. It's insane.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the nuttiest thing about being in that hearing, Mike, is that the hearing, it was just me and a couple of Republicans, and there were a couple of other witnesses for the Democrat side. And of course, they had all busted these supporters who were, rah-rah socialism, rah-rah welfare, rah-rah big government. And I was the bad guy. So I was the one that it came from a working class background and said that, you could do this. And I was the bad guy. And so that's the crazy thing.
Who was the woman? It was like Mary Jo something or other. She's the one who talked about how the furniture cost $40,000 for each office, right? And I pulled the bootstrap so many times they snapped off. So what do you say to her? What do you say to that sob story? The woman who's working so hard and still can't make ends meet, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, what do you say to her?
Well, look, that woman's name is Amy Jo Hutchinson, and she sat right next to me. I listened to her speech the whole time. We shared a moment. It's not about her story so much, and I definitely, you don't want to get to the point where you're bashing the working poor or you're bashing people that are struggling. But the message that I want to give to Amy Jo and the message that I want to give to people like her is that I feel like, and I really strongly believe this to my core, Mike, the answers that you seek are within yourself. And the answers that you seek are within yourself in your local community. They are not coming from high above the government. Like AOC and these people in Congress, they will use your story and they will put you out on social media and they will do whatever because it fits their agenda. But those people are not coming to save you. And, there's an element of personal responsibility and taking responsibility for our choices that I think is kind of lost in what the left decides to push out in these messages of big government expanding welfare state, et cetera. So what I would say to people like Amy Jo, what I would say to the younger version of me, what I would say to anybody else that is looking up to me or anybody else in this movement as an example of what can be achieved is that you have to start with yourself. Change starts from inside out, not from outside in. And it starts from the bottom up, not from the top down.
And preach that all day. That's so true. So we talk on the show all the time about culture. Big picture culture, like American culture, but also like cultures of different parts of the country and different groups of people, et cetera, et cetera. So what would you say the culture was in your neighborhood, your school, and then maybe contrast that with the culture that your mom created in your home?
Well, so the thing about the culture, like where I'm from, it wasn't like this was not, super ghetto and gunshots and everything. Like it was nothing like that. In those days, it was very working class. But then again, in the school that I went to, and I say this all the time, it's rated right now a D or an F by the Ohio Board of Education. So these are very poor schools. And it wasn't because of lack of funding, because we all know that so much funding goes to these schools. They were just poorly performing schools. And the culture in the school, it was not a culture of breeding success and saying, okay, guys, where are you going to college? Like, let's put these kids on a path to college. What's going on? The culture was, if you can play a sport, then we may be able to do something with you. And if you're just a smart kid that likes to read books or whatever, we don't know what to do with you. And so that was the culture. Reading wasn't cool, just being interested in anything other than music, entertainment, or sports wasn't cool. So that was the culture, in the surrounding. And what my mother and some extended members of my family instilled in me was that desire to learn, was that desire for education, was that desire to push beyond what everybody else on the streets were doing. Um, and that is the difference. And I say this all the time, that this change and the messages that people get, they have to start at home. They have to start with, I believe in a strong 2-parent household. I wasn't lucky or privileged enough to come from that kind of a household. Thank God that I had at least one parent that cared.
So good. Rob Smith. Rob, can you stick around? We got a ton more to talk about.
Absolutely.
We got your book, Always a Soldier, pre-sale today. Where can people pre-buy it today?
They can pre-buy it at Amazon.com. It's right there. Just go to Amazon and search for Always a Soldier, Rob Smith.
Done. I want to talk about the poverty draft, which is something that AOC talked about in that little clip there, and I've never heard of that before. And obviously you can speak to that, being a veteran as well. And then I want to talk about the event that you spoke at the other day, this Black History event with Van Jones was there, and Charlemagne the God, and Kay James from a Heritage Foundation, and you were up on the stage. Really awesome and diverse group of people, so I'm excited to talk about that. We'll do more with our very own contributor at the first, the great Rob Smith. More coming up. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Crusaders, since we got Rob Smith, I don't want to let him go. We have a lot more to talk about. He's got a new book coming out, Always a Soldier, pre-sale today on Amazon, Always a Soldier. Let's talk about the soldier thing for a second, Rob.
Yes.
AOC in that clip, she was responding to someone and said, hey, I'm glad you brought up the poverty draft. And then she went this whole thing. I've never heard of the poverty draft. What is the poverty draft?
Okay, so here's the thing, and I didn't see that part of the clip, but this is what I think. And one of the ways that Amy Jo to the left and AOC, one of the ways that they tried to denigrate my story and my service is by saying that, oh, the poverty draft is this idea that the only people that serve in the military are people that are too poor or too stupid or too dumb to do anything else. And that's what I think that was the idea that I think that they were getting at. And then Amy Jo, she made some comments that I really didn't like, because she said, well, we have a lot of people from where I come from in West Virginia that go in the military because, they're too poor to do anything else, or they don't have any other options. And how I respond to that is, number one, how dare you denigrate, not this is not about me, but how dare you denigrate the service of people who've actually decided to put their lives on the line and serve this country for whatever reason. Either they're serving because they may have limited options, or they're serving because they may want to go to school, or they're serving because they may have a strong love for America, or they're serving because of some combination of all three. The point is that they served and you didn't. So how dare you say anything to denigrate their service? So I believe that that's the idea that they're getting at. It is a very true thing that enlisted soldiers, such as myself, I was enlisted, tend to come from more poor working class backgrounds. But you know what? I talk to so many soldiers that are people that I served with back when I was in the military, people that are fans of mine right now that come from the military, and they will tell you that, yes, I served in the military. You know what? Either I served in the military for 20 years, I got to build a great life for myself while serving my country, or I did my time, I did 3, 4, 5 years, and I learned so much during my service that I was able to sustain myself, and I was able to create a solid foundation for myself when I exited the military. And now I'm a business owner, or I went to school, or I did this, or I did that. And so the military, for these people in the military, for me, was a jumping off point. And
Love it.
what AOC and her cronies hate so much about a military story is that that opportunity to go into the military exists for most people. And most people can do that. But in order to get the benefits of military service, you actually have to serve, you actually have to do something. And that is not a culture of dependency.
Yes, you're right. That's it. You have to do it. And they don't want to champion anything that requires personal individual effort. They want you to sit back and be a recipient of it. Wow, that's it. Yeah, that makes sense. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
what's the biggest life lesson, cultural lesson you learned from being in the military?
The biggest gift that the military has given me, and I saw this so much, and I was shocked at how many people do not have this in the outside world and in the civilian world, is discipline. People lack discipline. They lack the discipline to show up somewhere on time. They lack the discipline to do the work. They lack the discipline to do the work well. They lack the discipline to keep their bodies and their minds in shape. There's a complete lack of discipline in the civilian world. And if the military gave me anything at all, and it's given me a lot, it's given me courage and self-sacrifice and all this other things. But discipline, it is what the military gave me that I use in my day-to-day life every single day.
Is it racist and or mean or rude of me to suggest that lack of discipline is a major driver of poverty for all people of all races? Or is that inconsiderate of me, or what do you think of that sentence?
I would think, well, it's not racist because you're not saying lack of discipline is like, oh, the problem with black people. You're saying poverty, and poverty is white, black, Latino. Like, poverty doesn't know any color, okay? And that's one of the things that we have to get into, is that there are plenty of people in poverty, and the tough love approach is to say that a lack of discipline leads to poverty, but I would like to say that there are three things that'll keep you out of poverty, right? First thing is graduating high school. The second thing is not having a child out of wedlock. And I believe that the third thing is trying to either graduate high school or graduate college. And there's a personal responsibility aspect of this situation that we remove when we talk about poverty, because we don't want to seem mean to people, and we don't want to seem like the heartless, soulless Republicans, right? And so what I like to say is I like to share my story and to go really deep into it. And there were times when I failed, and there were times when I wasn't winning, and there were times when I made really, really poor decisions. And if I don't look at myself in the mirror and say that, man, I really screwed that up, I have to take responsibility for this. I have to take responsibility for my personal life, my professional life, my physical life, my financial life, then I will not win. In the conversation that we don't have when it comes to poverty, and people in poverty of all colors, is that we don't want to talk about personal responsibility, and we don't want to talk about the efficacy that they have to be in control of their own lives, because now that is me.
Yep. We only got a few minutes. I want to talk about the event you were at the other day with Tim Scott. Awesome panel of people, and I love the diversity of thought on this panel as well. So
yeah,
tell me about working, being up there with Van Jones and Charlemagne the God. So Van Jones, I'd say very far on the left. Charlemagne has got like an interesting kind of, like he's like, I don't know, he's kind of all over on some different things. So what was your takeaway with those two guys, and compared to your thoughts that you've been sharing here?
Yeah. Well, the event was really successful, and I thank the senator for inviting me to that event. If anybody saw me, one of my first big social pops was the Vice, Black Conservatives Debate Black Liberals, and it was very turned up, charged atmosphere. And what I appreciated about the event yesterday is that this event was about solutions. This event was about conversation. This event was a bipartisan event to come together. I think Van Jones is a great guy. Van Jones has taken a lot of hits from the left for even deigning to go into this administration and to get something done with criminal justice reform, how we got the First Step Act done.
Mm-hmm.
I had a really good experience with Charlemagne, even though Charlemagne is to the left of me. I think that Charlemagne's politics are probably a little bit more right leaning than he'd like to admit. But I think so. But I'll leave that for him to say. But what I enjoyed the most about being on the panel with two other African American males that were to the left of me is that we weren't arguing with each other, we weren't fighting with each other. We were trying to come together to find solutions, and that to me was the strongest part of what happened on that stage yesterday. And Senator Scott really had an idea that this is not going to be the turn on, this is not going to be arguing, this is not going to be for social media moments. This is going to be a conversation that the African American community needs to have more with Black conservatives and Black liberals, so that we can figure out how both sides can come together to help the community and try to shift our culture and try to shift some of the things that are going wrong a little bit.
Yeah, amen to that. There was no, Charlemagne destroys Rob Smith. We don't. No. I'm not interested in any of that. This.
You know what? Nobody on the stage was interested in any of that.
No. So this question kind of help me rephrase this question better, because this is against the spirit of what you just said. What is something you think Van Jones, let's focus on a Van. If you were to just input one thought, one principle into Van Jones's brain that you think would make the biggest difference in how he sees the world, and right, what's something that you were like, oh Van, I just want you to get this. What would that be?
I would say that Van Jones on the panel, he talked a lot about his background, and he's a child of two educators. And, he was a child of two educators in a two-parent household. And, that matters. And he shared a story about how he has been so successful because his family made so many sacrifices for him. And I would say this to Van Jones, and we've had conversations about this, and what I would say to him is that we have to figure out, and I think that he's such a strong voice for the left, and they listen to him. So we have to figure out how to impart the same messages that your two parents gave you, and figure out how to take that tough love approach with people who are not lucky enough or blessed enough to be born with the same kind of support that you had. And that the answer is not always that more government intervention or more progressive policies. So that is the conversation that I would have with Van Jones.
Such a brilliant insight. He's a product of a two-parent home that had a culture of valuing education.
Yes.
Right, that's it. That's everything we just talked about, and he's the perfect example of that. All right, Rob, give us a quick promo for the book. What's it about? What do you want people to get out of this?
Yes, my book, Always a Soldier, Service, Sacrifice, and Coming Out as America's Favorite Black Gay Republican, is available for pre-order today. You can check it out on Amazon. Will be released in mid-May. The book is not only a military memoir about the time that I spent in the military, about serving in Iraq, about all of the reasons and all of the experiences that I had that made me love this country, that made me see, Blacks, whites, Latinos, whatever, we're all American. So that is what really inspired a lot of what's going on right now with me. And then a lot of the book is a lot about political commentary. I talk about coming out as a conservative Republican, losing all of my friends, what's going to happen with the Black vote when it comes to Trump versus the Democrats in 2020. I think that President Trump is going to do very well among Black voters. And also, more importantly, I'm a gay conservative, a gay Republican, and I talk a lot about the far LGBTQ left and how they do not represent the vast majority of gay and lesbian Americans of either political affiliation, either conservative or liberal, and about how some of the stuff that they're doing when it comes to child drag queens, when it comes to radical transgender ideology infiltrating women's spaces, and when it comes to these quote unquote trans kids, how it's going too far, and how gays and lesbians on both sides need to come together to put the kibosh on it before they ruin all the progress that hardworking gays and lesbians have gotten so far.
Yeah, wow, really good point. And if I may, the thing I loved most about this viral moment of yours from last week, the last I saw was like 10 million views or something crazy. It wasn't over the top. You weren't yelling. You weren't attacking anyone. It was just like, here's my story. Here's the truth. And this is why I think that way. And it just resonated because it was true and honest. And let's keep doing that. Rob Smith, Always a Soldier, pre-order today. Contributor right here on The First. Rob, great to talk to you, man. Let's do it again.
All right, Mike. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you, brother. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Slater Crusaders, so glad you're here. What a day. Just talked with Rob Smith, and now I want to go to truly someone I'm incredibly grateful for, someone who has, without a doubt, changed the trajectory of the Slater family, and that is Dr. Meg Meeker. I was gifted her book, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, by one of our listeners when Grace, our daughter, was born. So my son Jack, he's a little over 3, and then Grace is almost 2. And I remember talking on the radio about how I have no idea what to do with a girl. And someone said, here, read this. And it completely changed the course of my and therefore my daughter's life. And Dr. Meg Meeker has a new book, Raising a Strong Daughter in a Toxic Culture, 11 Steps to Keep Her Happy, Healthy, and Safe. Dr. Meeker, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me, Mike.
It is my honor. Let's start here. Let's talk about boys and girls. So I got another boy on the way any day now. So I got to get back into like boy mode. But yeah, what's the difference between raising boys and girls?
Oh my, there's a huge difference. Really, boys from the get-go are very visual. And you'll notice that if you set a boy and a girl up and you held a mobile over a boy, and you just looked at him with a face, his vision would go right to the mobile. If you did the same thing with a girl, she would look at your face. So boys are just attracted to moving things. But boys in general tend to be sometimes a little more independent. They tend to definitely be more physical. My experience is they've been a little more even-keeled mood-wise, even up until puberty, of course. But the relationship between the mother and a daughter and the mother and a son is very different. The same is true with dads and daughters, dads and sons. Very, very different.
Let's talk dads, I guess, first. Yeah. How should a dad approach this, right? Like, with what posture, with what heart should I'm being very selfish here, Dr. Meeker, should I approach my son and my daughter differently?
Well, I think that you approach them the same until they get a little bit older. And by older, I mean 4 or 5. Because sons and daughters both need a lot of physical contact. They need a lot of nurturing and hugs. They need, and this is true from dads or moms. And I think one of the biggest disservices we do to dads is that we allow in the first year of life or even the first 6 months of life for mom to be the primary person who feeds the baby, maybe breastfeeding. I always encourage mothers to pump and get something in a bottle so dad can rock and feed the baby. So I think that we need to encourage more attachment between dads and sons and daughters early on in life. When they hit 4 or 5, a son is all about building and smashing and moving. A daughter is not. She's usually gravitates more towards indoor play, playing with her dolls, playing, maybe doing some kind of crafts. So it's really important with your son to just do physically active things with him and just spend that time with him, because you have to remember, I think if you look at a child's life through their eyes, your young child, 1, 2, 3, or 4, and on, is looking at you, Dad, as a giant who knows everything, is going to protect them, make sure they're okay, and you're stronger than anybody in the world. They don't look towards their mother like that, as much as moms would like to think so. Kids look very differently towards their mother. So I think once you understand that your son is looking to you as his hero and the guy who knows everything, then you can just start to spend more time with him, have very simple, conversations, straightforward conversations, but really don't worry about it, because all that son wants is your attention and time. Because if you give him attention and time and you're the hero and you're the smartest guy in the world, life is great.
Yeah, love that. One question on your other book, you got a bunch, but Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. You talked about a daughter, how I, the dad, am her first love. What does that mean? Explain that. What's the importance of that?
A little intimidating, isn't it?
Right?
You are her first exposure to male love. So when you hold her when she's little and you nurture her and you talk to her, she hears your voice, she feels you, she smells you, and she learns from you to trust men and to realize that men give love and men can be trusted to love. So you really set a template for how she's going to love and trust men for the rest of her life.
One of the chapters is sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. One of the chapters is be the man you want her to marry. Can you give some examples of how?
Sure. Well, for instance, one of the things I've noticed is that girls gravitate towards as they get older, towards what they know, what they want. For instance, if a girl is used to being yelled at, ignored by her father, she'll say, I'll never, ever, ever marry a man like that. Well, guess what? 5, 6 years later, I'm invited to a wedding, and at the end of the altar is a man just like that. If you treat your daughter with respect and kindness, you don't swear around her, let's say, you spend a lot of time with her, you're courteous with her. When she goes out and is dating a guy or thinking of marrying a guy, if he doesn't have those character qualities, she's probably not going to want anything to do with him. So she's going to look for the character qualities that she's had with you, because that's what's familiar. That's what she trusts. That's what she knows. He may not look like you. He may have a very different job. But if you really look at his heart, a lot of what's in his heart is what was in your heart. And it's funny, my daughter got married a couple of years ago, and she called me a few months before, and she said, Mom, I really love Jonathan, excited to get married, but I feel kind of creepy. And I said, why? She said, because he reminds me so much of Dad. And I said, well, that's a good thing, So in other words, what your daughter gets used to in her relationship with you is what she'll carry on as an adult. And that's a really heavy message for dads, but it's so important. It's very, very important.
Love it. You talk about knowing your daughter's heart. Let's focus on daughters now, just because that's
Sure.
these last two books. Knowing your daughter's heart. Yeah. What does that mean? Because I Grace is 2, and I'm knowing her personality, but that's different than her heart, right?
Yes, it is. It is. And it's so simple. I always tell parents that parenting a kid is so simple, but it's hard. And starting to know your daughter's heart early on, and her heart is the same at 2 or 10 or 15. But a daughter, and once we understand what they want and what they need, parenting gets so much simpler for us. So a daughter has a longing to love and be loved. Okay, so how are you working that out in her life with your 2-year-old? Are you looking at her? Are you picking her up and hugging her? Are you putting her to bed? Are you showing her how to love? Because that's a very deep need that she has. She has a longing to trust, for instance. How are you showing her how to trust? Do you tease her a lot? Do you walk away? Do you never spend any time? Or when you walk into a room, do you sit down, look her in the eye, and say, hey, how are you? Pat her on the head. So she's learning to trust that you will be there for her. So once you start to meet those deep needs in your daughter's heart, the rest is easy. But what we do as parents, we get all wound up in, okay, what type of diaper should he wear? What kind of stroller? What kind of car seat? What kind of this? And, that's all silly, simple stuff. Focus on the big stuff and the little stuff will just come.
So good. Okay, Dr. Meeker, can you stick around for one segment because I want to talk about your new book, right?
Sure.
Raising a strong daughter in a toxic culture. So I want to talk about where you see our culture being toxic, which is really important because we're in it. So sometimes we don't even realize how toxic certain things are. So if you can help us remove some of these blind spots, that'd be awesome. And then I love these 4 questions that we have to help daughters and sons, I guess, answer. Where did I come from? Am I valuable and significant? Is there a moral standard? And where am I going? Awesome. All right, we're going to do that next. Dr. Meg Meeker, buy her book, Raising a Strong Daughter in a Toxic Culture. It just came out. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Slater Crusaders, I'm just so fired up about today's show. This is awesome. Dr. Meg Meeker, such an honor to talk to her. I highly recommend Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, came out a couple years ago. We have another book, Raising a Strong Daughter in a Toxic Culture. It just came out. Dr. Meeker, where do you see our culture being toxic? Because we live in it, we're immersed in it, it's all I know. And I may not be aware of how toxic certain things are. So where do you see toxicity?
Yeah. Well, you don't really see it when your daughter is 2. But if you start to pay attention, look at what's around you, you'll start to get a clue. But you'll definitely see it when she starts school. My publisher and I argued about this toxic, and I said the world really is toxic, but I don't want to scare parents. But the reason I put that in there is because every parent is afraid. If you have a daughter who's over 5, certainly over 10, you're really scared of what's out there. So why do I call it toxic? When I ask kids, say over 10, what are the biggest things they struggle with? Without skipping a beat, they say being thin enough. Being thin enough. Now, a boy would never say that. So why are girls getting that message? Just look at advertisements. Look at the things that are on TV. Every girl, 30% of girls in the 3rd grade are either on a diet or feel they should be on a diet. 30% of 3rd graders. And it just gets worse from there. The other thing that girls say when they're junior high and teenagers is sex. I feel that I'm supposed to be sexually active before I leave high school, but I don't really want to be, but I will be because that's what is expected of me. The other thing is social media. Huge, huge, huge issue for girls. And we know that there's a direct link between the amount of time a girl spends on social media and depression. Now, of course, that's not something you have to worry about with your daughter now. But I'll bet you she's flipping through your cell phone, and looking at it and picking out pictures. But, girls are exposed to so many things that sort of tear them down and make them weak and pull out the worst in them. The other thing is that girls in particular, can live in a private world. I couldn't live in a private world when I was growing up. What do I mean by that? They can get on Snapchat or Instagram and their phone, and they could be talking to people, having conversations their parents have no idea they're having. Now, that's a very dangerous thing. Parents say, well, but they have to have privacy. And I say, who says so? Privacy is not really good for kids, even teenagers, because secrets aren't good and kids can't handle privacy. They need their parents to know, what are kids saying to you? What are you seeing? What are your friends saying to you? Are they saying mean things, nice things? Are you getting sexed? Sex. 9, 10, 11-year-old kids are having boys send them a picture of them naked because they want the girl to go, oh my gosh. So there are a lot of messages coming at our girls. Look at even the Super Bowl. Okay, now I think J-Lo's really nice. But if you're a 10-year-old girl watching that, what do you think? Wow, I need to be like that someday. I need to be grabbing onto poles with hardly any clothes on, going upside down and acting sexy towards boys and men. Girls imitate that. They imitate that. They feel that they need to be like her. And this is what I mean about toxicity, because we're not teaching girls to be strong and have strong character. We're teaching them to imitate what they see around them. And that's not very healthy stuff.
So good. And it's everywhere. I bet when you talk to a girl and you're like, hey, so what are you worried about or whatever, and they say, thin. I want to be thin. Does that just like crush you? That's just like, as a woman, does it just like crush your soul?
Crush you. It's crushing. Because everywhere they are, they see skinny women who've usually been photoshopped. Many of this, and I don't mean to be really critical of mothers, but a lot of girls live with hearing their mother say, oh, I just got to lose that last 10 pounds. Oh, I can't eat that. You know, no dessert for me. I got to be on a diet. And I say to moms, please don't say that. Because what you're communicating to your daughter is this is part of a woman's life, is to be constantly focused on losing weight. So don't do that. What I encourage parents to do, go ahead.
I was going to say, as opposed to what? Yes, please.
So what I would encourage parents to do is, rather than focus on what she looks like or her weight or how she's dressed or even how well she does things, focus on her character. You could start doing that with your 2-year-old right now. You know, I'm so happy I saw you share something with your mom. I saw you pick up your toys. You know, you are such a good girl. You know, you're very patient. You're very kind. You're very strong. But focus on character qualities and, you know, compliment her on those. And that's where she'll feel good about herself. But if you're constantly focused on what she does, how well she performs, and what she looks like, that's where she's going to live her life. Now, is it okay for you as a dad to say, honey, you look so beautiful today? Of course it is. It's all about balance. But if that's all you focus on, rather than saying, you know, I'm so happy that you told me the truth, that's what integrity is. Integrity is telling people the truth. And I'm so proud of you for that. Guess what she'll do? She'll continue to tell the truth. So we need to parent on a deeper level. We need to make things simpler. We need to not buy into what we're feeling and seeing around us, and parent our way and parent character qualities, not, you know, the superficial things. The problem is all our friends are doing it. So that's what we do.
Yeah, I'm just writing some of these lines here. The culture pulls out the worst in them. That's so true. And I love just parenting on a deeper level. Wonderful challenges. Okay, let's talk about these questions here. And I don't think we have time to go through all of them, but that's okay. I want people to buy the book. So 4 truly existential questions that really we all need to answer, but at least we can help our kids. Where did I come from? Am I valuable and significant? Is there a moral standard? Where am I going? Wow. Okay. Yeah. Where do we start on those?
Mike, honestly and truly, you can begin teaching your 2-year-old daughter these things now. And let me tell you why I wrote about it, and I'll take the middle 2 because we don't have time to do all 4. We have an epidemic of depression and anxiety amongst kids, and it's complex. But at the root of it, kids 5, 10, 15 don't know why they're on earth. They don't know why they're valuable, why they're significant, because what their parents have done with very good intentions have taught them how to be good at stuff. Okay, and I can't tell you how many 6th graders through high school have said to me, I can't stop playing soccer because my parents won't watch me anymore. I get so much attention from my parents. I've had kids go off to college, graduating college. I can't stop swimming because my dad comes to all my swim meets, and then what do I talk to my dad about? So we're focusing on teaching our kids they're significant and valuable because they get A's, they're good at gymnastics, because they're good at sports, they're good at the violin, whatever, on their performance. But we need to teach our kids that even if they sat in a closet the rest of their lives, our love for them would never change. When you teach your kids that, and you tell your kids that, and you focus on the heart of the kid, that sinks their roots so deep that when they hit social media or they see J-Lo on stage, they're going to be less tempted to follow that because they know that to mom and dad, they are enormous and loved and wanted. I can't tell you how many junior high and high school kids I say, why are you here on earth? Or tell me who loves you, or what makes you an important young woman? And they'll look at me with like a deer in a headlight. They don't know. They just don't know why they're here. They know what they're striving to, but they don't know. And my value is the same way. I have a strong faith. I have a strong Christian faith. And I believe that kids should know, daughters should know, they are not here by accident. They're here for a purpose. Your plan as your job as a mom or dad is to help them figure out what that purpose is. And it's usually not good grades or whatever, but it's to find their giftedness and work that giftedness out in life. And once kids know that, I'm telling you, they feel so secure. It's really, really important. Now, why the moral code? Because we are living in a time of moral relativism where adults say, it's good for me, but it's not good for you. This is my experience. Yours a different experience. So maybe the trees are green and maybe the trees are blue. It doesn't matter what I perceive. Now, adults can sort of live like that. It makes me a little crazy. But if you bring a child into a world like that, who's 5 or 8, and they don't know the rules and they don't know what's right or what's wrong, but they feel it instinctively that pulling a cat's tail or hitting him, with a baseball bat is a wrong thing to do, but it's not affirmed around them, they feel crazy. Kids without a set of rules to know what is right behavior, what is wrong behavior, that it's not okay to go into second grade and yell at your teacher, right? Which I've had kids do, and their parents say, well, I want her to express herself. She's having difficulty, yada, yada. I said, I know. She can express herself, but you can't yell at your teacher. There's right and wrong. So when kids operate and live in a world where they know what the rules are, they're secure, they're happy. And when they see their parents and their siblings following the same rules, they begin to get that this is how you live a good life. So we can try to throw them away, morality for ourselves. Can't do it with kids. It makes them crazy. They can't choose it's right around. Just quickly, I had a dad in my office with his 5-year-old kindergarten. I'm doing her exam. I asked a question to the daughter. Dad answered it, and the girl literally said, "Shut up, Dad. I'm answering it, not you." And my instinct was, you need to spank. But so I after a while, this is true, I excused the daughter from our room, and I said to Dad, why are you allowing her to do that? And he actually had responded to the girl when she said, shut up. I'm afraid that I did something that upset you enough to tell me to shut up. And I thought, are we living in the same world here? So after I excused the girl, I said, sir, what you got to understand is she can express herself and she can feel what she feels, but there are rules. You don't tell your dad to shut up, ever, no matter how old you are. I mean, I would never have told my dad to shut up. This is what I mean by moral relativism. We've thrown it out in our parents. And if our kids feel it and experience it, we feel that we should let them run with it. And it's the worst thing you can do.
Yep, and who's in charge in that situation?
Exactly.
Dr. Meeker, I gotta run in one or as quick as possible. I'm a Christian, so let's no need to beat around the bush. What is your daughter's Christian mission, purpose? Why is she on this earth?
Yeah, well, I can answer that. I have, we have three daughters, and my husband took them on mission trips, and one of my daughters feels she's bilingual. She's called to the poor. One daughter teaches for very little salary because she feels that that's her calling in life. So they didn't know these things when they were 10. But what you need to do is expose your kids to service. Service.
Yes.
Find somebody in your area who needs help. It can be the neighbor lady. It can be the homeless. You can work in a soup kitchen. You can do a Habitat for Humanity. And you've got a child who's struggling with being selfish and bratty. Find some way for them to serve other people. And in doing that, they will find why they're on earth and what they're called to do. And when you do that, you give them a gift that's unmatched, because no amount of, no college can give that to you, no sport can give that to you. But when you find the sweet spot where what you're born to do in service, man, that's when kids really feel good about life.
Dr. Meeker. Anyone listening now who's never encountered Dr. Meeker, please go buy all her books, particularly Raising a Strong Daughter in a Toxic Culture. And now you know why I was raving about her when we first started talking. Dr. Meeker, what an honor. Please, can we do it again, ma'am?
I would love to. I got a lot to say, so I'd love to, Mike.
There's lots to talk about. Thank you, doctor. Yeah. Thank you so much. That's it. Show's over. What a show. We'll be back tomorrow. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word.